All right. What we're going to look at is we're going to look at multiplying variables, but we want to think through what they mean. So what does x to the third power mean, x cubed? It means you have an x times an x times an x. That's what it means. So what would x to the third times x to the fourth mean? A lot of kids are like, oh, is that x to the 12th? Wait, I remember rules. No, forget rules. We want to understand things. If we understand what things mean, we'll never forget them, and we can do them always. You try to remember a rule, you're going to always forget it. So what does x to the third times x to the fourth mean? Well, x to the third means x times x times x. Times x to the fourth, well, x to the fourth means x times x times x times x. So if we're multiplying those, how many x's do you see? There's 7. That's why x to the third times x to the fourth is x to the 7th. So what about if we have a problem like this? 3a squared times 5a squared. Well, let's think what it means. 3a squared is 3 times what is a squared? A times a. Now we're multiplying by 5a squared. Well, 5a squared is 5. A squared is an a times a. Well, we can multiply the 3 and 5 and get 15. A times a times a times a. How many a's do you see? A to the 4th. Think what it means. Don't try to remember rules. Let's look at this one. Well, let's write out what it means. 2a squared b, that's a 2 times a times a times b. Now we're multiplying by negative 3 times a times b times b times b times b. Well, 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. You have an a times a times a. Well, that's a to the third. And now if we look at the b's, there's b times b times b times b times b. So that's b to the 5th power. And there we have our answer. Nice and simple. What about this guy? Well, write out what it means. Think what it means. A to the third means a times a times a. B squared is b times b times a c. That's being multiplied by all this. Well, that's 5 times a times a b times a c times a c. Well, we only have one number there, and that's 5, so we have the 5. If we count up our a's, I got an a times a times a times another a right here, so that's a to the 4th. If we look at our b's, b times b times b, that's b to the 3rd power. And finally, you have a c, c, and c, so we have c to the 3rd. So the final answer is 5 times a to the 4th times b to the 3rd times c to the 3rd. So what does x squared mean? Well, we said, hey, that means x times an x. If I square something, I'm multiplying it by itself twice. If I cube it, I'm multiplying it by itself 3 times. So this says, so what does 2x squared y, that whole quantity squared, mean? That means I'm taking this inside the parentheses and I'm multiplying it by itself twice because it's being squared. So I have a 2x squared y times a 2 x squared y. That's what it means. And then I can work it and get our answer. Well, that's what we're going to do on this problem. We have negative 3a to the 4th y, that whole quantity squared. So I'm going to take this whole thing, and it says square it. In other words, multiply it by itself. So I'm going to write out negative 3a to the 4th y times negative 3a to the 4th y. Now I'm going to go ahead and write what it means because it helps me understand it and follow it. So a times a y, and then I have a negative 3a y right here. All right, the negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. You have a, that's a to the 8th, and then you have a y times y, which makes it y squared. Again, we must think through what things mean. Number 5, I have negative 2a squared cubed. So since it's cubed, that means I'm going to multiply this by itself 3 times. So negative 2a squared times negative 2a squared times negative 2a squared. Well, negative 2a squared is a negative 2 times a times a. Negative 2 times a times a. Negative 2 times a times a. So negative 2 times negative 2, that's positive 4. Times that negative 2 is going to make it negative 8. And now you see a times a times a times a times a times a. That's a to the sixth. Number 6. Well, this is a4 times b squared to the 10th. That means I have a4 b squared times another one, times another one, times another one. In other words, we're going to have 10 of these. On this one, we're going to have to think it through. Okay? Now, we could write it out, but I don't want to waste all that paper. So if we think about this, an a to the fourth is a, b. And we're multiplying that a time and again, 10 times. So if we just look at the a's, we just look at this, we have 4 of them. You have 4 here, 4 of them here, 4 of them here, 4 of them here, 10 times. That would create 40 of them. If we look at our b's, you have 2 of them here, 2 of them here, 2 of them here, out 10 times. That's going to create how many? 20 of them. So that would be our answer. Okay. Again, sometimes we're not going to be able to write everything out. We're going to have to use our head, but we want to think what it means. One more problem for you. Let's look at this guy. This says this whole thing squared. So I'm going to take 2a cubed b times another 2a cubed b. And now I'm going to multiply. I got to do this guy, which says I'm squaring it, so I have 2 of them. Well, if I write out what this means, I got 2a, 2a. Here I have 3a, b, and 3a, b. Multiply my numbers, 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. I'm going to do 2 times 2, which is 4, 3 times 3, which is 9. Together, that gives me 36. Then we have 3 A's, and an A. So 3 and 3, 6 of them, 7 of them, 8 of them. And then if we look at our B's, a B, 3 of them, B to the 8th. Again, you must think what things mean. Don't try to remember rules that teachers taught you. Try to think things through.